Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Trade has been the pillar that has kept relations between China and the U.S. afloat despite stormy skies. With trade strained by tariff wars and technology lockouts under the Trump administration, ties are expected to remain somewhat tough with the projected next U.S. President Joe Biden. The silver lining, though, based on his track record, is Mr. Biden's likely more measured approach to the others, including, of course, to China, instead of the wild swings and unpredictability that marked the last 4 years, some argue. On that, I talked to Craig Allen, the president of USChina Business Council. Here's his thoughts. In Washington, D.C., I'm joined by Craig Allen, president of USChina Business Council. Mr. Allen, good to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
First question, how will American businesses not being caught up in the crossfire of geopolitics between China and U.S. with a presumed president coming up in the office coming January?
Well, on January 20th, we will have a transition of power. One of the areas that we should expect some changes is with regard to U.S.-China relations. But I think it's a little bit early to say exactly how that will develop. One thing that I think will be clear is that in a Biden administration, there will be a little bit less confrontation and unexpected twists and turns, executive orders, and other that have made predictability a big problem within U.S.-China relations. So I would expect a more routine and predictable and transparent government-to-government relations, which I think businesses generally will welcome, both American businesses and Chinese businesses.
Mr. Allen, dialogue mechanism, discussion platforms are extremely important. Now we see the ups and downs of these platforms. Names change, the content change, and sometimes even scrapped off, for example, during this administration. Now, what would you suggest from the business community's perspective? What kinds of dialogue, what kinds of mechanism that needs to be urgently established in order to avoid, as you said, the unpredictability which is not welcomed by either community in China and in the U.S. businesses?
Well, I think that one of the immediate questions that will confront the Biden administration will be what to do with the Phase 1 negotiations that were completed earlier this year. And I suspect that both governments will wish to fulfill this agreement in full. That has probably two parts to it. The first part more on structural or policy issues, and the second part more on expanding U.S. exports. Both governments, I think, have an interest in continuing this agreement, and then looking beyond that agreement to negotiating a Phase 2 agreement that could lead to the elimination or removal or at least reduction in the tariffs that are in place currently, blocking trade going both ways. Mm-hmm. The 1 year or 18-month agenda should be to get rid of the tariffs by reaching some form of a Phase 2 agreement, and then looking beyond that to put the relationship on more firm grounds. In the meantime, I do think that we should also be talking at the multilateral level about the World Trade Organization and at the regional level to talk about APEC or other Asia-Pacific regional issues. China has recently entered the RCEP agreement. That is an important advance for China's economic diplomacy. And I congratulate China for this improvement, for this successful negotiation. I wonder, what does it mean for American companies, and how do we integrate ourselves, not only in China, but in the greater Asia market?
Let me just read some numbers I found out recently. A survey done by IHS Markit in late October of more than 6,600 companies in 12 countries found that companies in China reported the highest recovery rate from the coronavirus pandemic, followed by those in the U.S. And also, U.S. multinational companies, majority-owned affiliates in China, brought in sales $392.7 billion in the year 2018, up 4.8% from a year ago. That's, of course, the U.S. number. Now, given the two issues, one, there might be further geopolitical unpredictability, but on the other hand, the immediate factor of COVID-19, China's economy recovering. How do you think the American businesses should balance or could balance all of these evolving factors?
I think that we recognize that China has done a very good job at containing COVID, and that your economic growth in 2020 will be probably 3 or 4%. In 2021, probably 6% or more. And we want to be a part of that process, a part of that growth. If you look at beyond COVID, say for the next 10 years, China is almost certain to provide about 30% of global growth or more. And that's a good thing. The world needs a healthy China importing lots and keeping commodity prices higher, and being a source also of capital, of investment capital outside of China. And so I'm very happy that China is recovering, and hopeful that America, Europe, and the rest of the world will quickly find a way to get over COVID and get the world back, the global GDP, back to a more healthy 3-4% globally. We have to defeat COVID to achieve that objective.
Right.
And that will not be for 6 months. But hopefully a year from now, we will be able to return to that high level of global growth that allows all boats on the ocean to rise together. But we must defeat COVID.
There are several things I want to follow up with. First of all, since we talk about COVID, some suggest already that this could be one of the very core issues China and the United States could work together. Now, recently, Dr. Henry Kissinger, when talking during a Bloomberg conference, did talk about that, yet he did not recognize that as the most important issues of bilateral cooperation. And even when it comes to cooperation, he hesitated to illustrate further as to what nature cooperation could be established between China and the United States in various sectors. So how do you see what could be the common ground between the two countries? And certainly the business community would love it to also be realized.
Well, I think that there are two elements to that question. One is on the multilateral side, and the other is on the business-to-business side. One of the first things that the Biden administration will do is to rejoin the WHO and work within the WHO context to try to address our problems with COVID on a global basis. At the same time, I would not underestimate all of the collaboration currently underway between China and Chinese companies and American companies. As one very simple example, China has provided billions of pieces of PPE. On the research and on the production side, our companies are deeply integrated and working very closely on vaccines and therapeutics and equipment to defeat the virus. So despite the fact that relations between the two governments have not been ideal as of late, at the same time, the real work of scientific and technical collaboration and preparation for a vaccine, the production and distribution of the PPE that is necessary to protect our workers, all of that is going very smoothly.
Mr. Allen, another thing is about American companies doing business with China or in China. As we know, the tech war, quote unquote, has been one of the major components of the current administration in terms of their fight against China. How do you see the nature of it evolving in the next couple of months and extending to the next administration?
Well, technology is evolving very quickly, and there are many changes that are being considered by both governments. I look at the results of the 14th Five-Year Plan and the 5th Plenum recently completed in China, and note that technology independence and self-reliance and a reliable supply chain and security of the supply chain seems to have been one of the major themes of the 14th Five-Year Plan. On the U.S. side, I think there is also concerns about excessive reliance on any single source supply for both telecommunications or semiconductors, medical equipment or pharmaceuticals. And so I see both governments taking steps to increase production of high tech, to promote high technology in their own countries. And I am concerned that this tendency in both countries will expand from what is clearly a national security industry, such as arms building or command and control, to more and more and more and more technologies that are less clearly associated with national security. I think that most people would agree that semiconductors do have a national security element in them. Probably also telecommunications as a national security impact. But when you get to automotive or chemical or life sciences, pharmaceutical, aviation, those arguments become strained. And so I'm hopeful that we are able to keep to the national security debate relatively confined to a small part of our GDP and have WTO rules and regulations governing everything else. Now, data is another issue, very complicated. The Chinese people, the American people have different definitions of what is private and what data should be protected. And so globally, there are no firm regulations or standards on data protection. And so I worry that this also could become an area of dispute, and that we should be careful and cautious before putting restrictions on data transfer between countries. We do not want all of our countries to become data islands which cannot communicate with each other. There is a danger that if that were to be the case, Chinese banks in America would not be able to communicate with their home banks.
Right, right.
So as technology moves quickly, these problems multiply, providing many challenges to our national regulators.
From now until the new administration coming in, we at this point know who the American people eventually will put into the office, given your constitutional and legal process. But what do you think could be the best strategy for businesses on both sides?
Well, I would say that the transition process that we're going through in 2020 is quite unique. At least thus far, President Trump is reserving his rights to challenge the election results in court, and thus that process has been somewhat delayed. But I think it will not be delayed too long, and that the courts will look at the process and the fairness, the transparency, and make a final judgment very soon. And once that happens, there will be the formal transition process will begin. Now, even during that transition process, we only have one president, and it is the President Trump until January 20. And I am hopeful that he and his team will work effectively and enthusiastically with the incoming team of President-elect Biden. But there's no guarantee of that. Nonetheless, the transition teams on the Democratic Party side, under the leadership of President-elect Biden, are very active and busy and preparing for their new responsibilities. And thus, I'm confident that there will be a smooth transition of power on January 20th, just exactly as our Constitution states. The placement of the new president will be followed by a time of opportunity, hope, change, reform, openness, dialogue, understanding, and it's something that I think we should all anticipate and look forward to.
Craig Allen, the president of US-China Business Council, on the future of relations for the year 2021. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching.